Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile found...
From the studios of Blackwater Media in the city of Atlanta, it's time for the Shadowland radio show. I, of course, am your host, Dr. William Lester, and I want to thank you for joining me. I want to let everyone know that the show can always be heard as an archive, as a full-length archive, on the Blackwater Media YouTube channel, as well as the Shadowland radio show Facebook page. Also, it can be heard on Google+. I know that for the last few weeks that we have been talking about a variety of things, but I wanted to depart from that just a little bit and share with you something that I'm very excited about. I want to talk with you on this episode about my new audio book, which is entitled The Color of Shadow. And I'm so excited about it, and I wanted to get on here and talk with all of you. The book itself is an anthology, and it contains 10 short stories of a variety of topics, but they're all very much in the science fiction, fantasy, and or horror genre. And the one thing that will jump out at you, and it jumped out at me because as I was kind of collating the stories and deciding, what stories are going to go in here, which ones are going to not go in here, and there was a process where I was, deciding what to include and what to leave out. But I realized when I had a final list, something that you will realize immediately too, is that I love monsters. Give me a story with a monster, and I'm right there every time. And I've always been that way. So that comes through. There's some sort of creature in every story here. And so for me, and I hope for you, it's lots of fun. So I'm going to kind of go down and hit on each story. Of course, I won't be, giving too much away, because I want you to have the pleasure of enjoying the stories and seeing, what kind of monstrosities are lurking in the Shadowland. The first story is called The Saurian, which of course alludes to something reptilian, and the setting is in the swamp, which of course is one of my favorite settings. Many years ago, I created this kind of imaginary environment that I call the Blackwater, and it was an area where all sorts of strange, unexplained, and sometimes terrifying things happen. And of course, the Saurian is just such a tale. And I hope that you enjoy the Saurian, because like I said, it refers to something hideous and something reptilian. So too is the next story, which is entitled Kaiju. Kaiju is a Japanese word which roughly translates out to strange creature. And so that kind of sets the table for you. It refers to another one of my imaginary locales, a place called Mogo Island, and a very determined and very adventurous scientist, and the remarkable discovery that he makes on Mogo Island and what it could mean for science and indeed the rest of the world. The next story is entitled The Winged Thing, and it too involves an anthropologist, a researcher, a historian, someone who is an expert in certain aspects of mythology. And his expertise has led him to a remarkable discovery, which he will shortly unveil upon the world. And you'll be very surprised at exactly what that thing is. The next story is called The Intruders, and it's one of those little stories that involves two young boys and what happens to them when they find that they have too much time on their hands and they decide to go exploring in an old abandoned cemetery. You can imagine that that's really not a good idea. The story that comes next is called Arthropleura, and it's a story that is set in the 19th century. It's a story that involves a Victorian era scientist. It's a story that involves antiquarian books. And of course, it's a story that involves a creature out of time, out of a distant era, that has no place in the modern world. The next story is one of the older stories, I believe, in this collection. It was written many years ago. By the way, none of these stories are necessarily newly written. I mean, some of them date back possibly 20 years. And this collection, this audio book, is in many ways, for me, the opportunity of giving these stories a final resting place, a permanent exhibition, if you will. And the next story, like I said, it's called The Visitor, and it's a story that I wrote many, many years ago, and it's set in the Arctic, and it involves a team of researchers up there. And as you listen to the story, you feel the isolation. You feel the kind of cabin fever that can set in. And of course, these researchers, isolated as they are, will become exposed to something horrific. And when you hear The Visitor, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. The next story, entitled The Castle, is also a story that goes back many, many years. And this is an interesting story, I think, really because of the setting. The setting of it gives all of the appearance of a gothic horror story, which I can say was intentional. However, the actual setting is, I guess, what we call a parallel universe. It's not our reality. It's a parallel reality. And in that reality, it is their Victorian era, the equivalent of our Victorian era. So a lot of the imagery will be similar and familiar if you're familiar with that era. But it is happening in an alternate dimension. The next story, also set in the 19th century, but in our reality. I believe the story starts in 1851. It's called Up from the Depths. So there is a nautical theme here, and it is a very dramatic and terrifying tale of what happens when the crew of a clipper comes face to face with a horrific beast from the unknowable depths of the ocean, and everything that entails. So you can imagine. It's called Up from the Depths. Next we have Son of the Father, another period story. This one is set in 1st century Palestine, and as you know, that is a setting where some rather remarkable events occurred. And this story represents my twist on those events, and something just for you to sit and contemplate and say to yourself, what if? Son of the Father. The next story is called Tukoru. And you may say, well, what in the world is that? Is that even a word? Well, it's a word now. It's the name that I gave whatever these things are. And believe me, this is a story about things. Things that we don't know the origin of. That's the fun thing about this. We don't know where these things come from. We don't really know what they are. When you hear the story, you get something of an idea. They seem to be a combination of a couple of things, but they're really neither. But they are deadly. They are terrifying. They are horrific. They are monstrosities in every sense of the word. And the story is, quite frankly, a story about the power of fear. Fear of what happens in the darkness. Fear of that old traditional saying of things that go bump in the night. And some of those things that go bump in the night I call Tukoru. And so those are the stories. Those are the stories. I hope that you have half as much fun listening as I had putting it together. I think that it's a very enjoyable. It's not uncomfortably long book. I mean, I think the total listening time is right around 40 minutes, 45 minutes or something. So you can really sit down and enjoy listening to this and not get bogged down in some kind of long, incomprehensible odyssey type thing. It's a lot of it is I know what has been sometimes called flash fiction, which is a shorter story that's, get right to it. I mean, in these stories, we get right to the full brunt of whatever's happening. I would say The Castle, The Visitor, and Up from the Depths are probably the longest stories in the collection. They're not terribly longer, but just a little longer than the rest. But so that's what you're in for. And I think it's an enjoyable collection. I think it's great fun. I think it's perfect as we have entered into this Halloween season. It's the perfect thing to enjoy this time of year. It's the kind of thing, hey, maybe you're having a get-together for Halloween, and you can put this on, sit around, talk about the stories, listen to the stories, have a discussion, have a conversation. There's a lot of different avenues through which this can be enjoyed for the Halloween season. All of the stories, I would say, are family friendly. There's nothing here, I think, where you have to cover up the kids' ears and things like that. So, maybe instead of sitting around telling ghost stories, you sit around, you put this on, you have your s'mores, you have your popcorn, or what have you. So great entertainment. So, how do you get the book? Well, here's what's happening. I built a small website. I built a small website for the book, and on there you can just read a few details. It's not an overly involved web. You don't want to go to a website and have to, read the website all day. It's just a little brief summary, synopsis, a few details about some of the things that I'm doing, and it has a facility for you to order the book. The book is priced out at $4.99. So, it's cheaper than a paperback, right? It's $4.99. And basically what happens is when an order comes in, the buyer will receive what I call a download link. And you'll receive the download link in your email, because when you place your order, you have to give your email address. So when your order is confirmed, you will receive a download link in your email. And so all you have to do is click on the link and do your download. And of course, it's an MP3 file. So you can listen to it on all of the things that, all of the platforms, whether it's your laptop or your iPad, or, whether you have an iPhone, Android, whatever, Kindle, or your desktop computer. Maybe you want to burn it onto a CD and play it through CD player. Well, anything that can handle the MP3 file will be suitable. So as you're listening to this show, you will see the website on the slideshow, on the video part of this show. The website should come up on the screen, so you can easily see where to go to get the download, to get the audio book, and that's it. It's very simple. I hope you like it. It's called The Color of Shadow. 10 Tales of Terror, Suspense, and the Supernatural. It was a lot of fun doing it. I was very excited to come on to the show and kind of make this a part of the Shadowland scenario. And I hope you guys enjoy the book. I also appreciate you guys, listening to this show. And some of you have been kind enough to leave some comments on the Blackwater Media YouTube channel. Please continue to do that. Let me know what you think about the stories. Maybe you hear the stories. Maybe you have questions. Maybe there's some aspect of a story. Maybe there's some backdrop to a story, or to a character, or to a creature, or to a situation. Because remember, even over the course of a story, you're reading about this character, you're reading about a creature. Maybe all of the backstory is not really right there, but believe me, there's a backstory. So when you're reading The Visitor, or you're reading The Castle, or you're reading The Winged Thing, there's a backstory that exists with me as the writer, as the creator. There's a backstory that I, drummed up in my brain that never really made it onto the page, so to speak, but it exists because I need it to exist to bring the story into full flower for the reader / listener. There's a backstory to the Saurian, and it's a very short story, but there is a backstory to it. And such is the case with all of these stories. And so that's it. The Color of Shadow, my new audiobook. So it's officially available now. And like I said, look for the link on the video here as you're listening to the show. Look for the link. The link. Oh, by the way, if you're on the Blackwater Media YouTube channel, I have put the website link there on that page as a description in the description for this episode. So you can just click there and that'll just take you right over to the website. And that's all you need to do. And the rest is just very, very easy. So that's all for this episode of the Shadowland Radio Show. I'll remind you, you can hear the show on the Blackwater Media YouTube channel, also Google Plus, on the Shadowland Radio Show Facebook page. So, until next time, even though it's Halloween, don't freak out, because I'll see you again on the flip side.